Star Wars. The very name immediately conjures memories of fantastical planets, breathtaking battles, and enough family drama to satisfy the most die-hard Mari fans.
You are the Father!
Star Wars is primarily known for the Jedi, the space battles, laser guns, and the relationships that bind all of these things together. But there's one particular part of these films that helped give the franchise its final boost to legendary status. One aspect of filmmaking that would cement these films in the hearts of fans for decades to come. I'm speaking, of course, of the music. Duel of the Fates, the Imperial March, Across the Stars, Leia's theme. These songs are all incredibly iconic, beautifully composed masterpieces that have gone on to inspire music lovers from middle school bands to premier orchestras. However, the interesting thing about these beloved scores is that they are outside the story. They're there for us, not for the characters. These songs help with world building, setting the tone, bending the reactions of the audience towards tension or pensiveness or jubilance. The goal that John Williams had when writing these pieces was to make the story more immersive for the audience. Which leads us to an interesting comparison. If these songs were all written for the audience, what about the in-universe music? In this video, we'll analyze the myriad of examples of in-universe Star Wars music, discuss how that music's purpose differs, and what kind of lesson we can learn from this examination. Hello everyone, Darth here, and welcome to another overly analytical video essay. Why doesn't the Millennium Falcon have a radio? The gang is constantly cruising around the galaxy in relative silence, compared to our real world where music is nearly an essential part of our daily lives. And it's not just the Falcon. Is Luke blasting typical teenage punk rock while his land speeder zips across the landscape? No. Does he have his favorite pop songs playing in the background while he works? Nope. When reviewing the main films, it is incredibly rare to find scenes such as this one in Jedi Fallen Order, where Cal is listening to music via his Walkman 1900. In fact, nearly every example of in-universe music we find is that of live performances, but almost nobody seems to listen to recorded music. So, why? The Star Wars franchise is absolutely known for its amazing music, and yet there's a very obvious lack of music within the story itself. And most interestingly, this soundless scene setting seems to have been a conscious decision by George Lucas himself, as movie after movie after movie continually denies the characters the joy of auditory invigoration. For as long as humans have traveled, we have utilized music to pass the time and connect with one another. Especially considering the migratory nature of early humanity, we can accept the global archetype for societal movement from one place to another. And in those movements, humans in every geographic area developed their own music. This inspiration of creation isn't necessarily a movement-based phenomenon, but one based upon a long span of time completing a repetitive task. This could be traveling, as in the case of Manifest Destiny expansion across the American West. These songs and more were created as sort of a historical record, so people would remember these journeys and the heroes who braved them. Much like the repetitive nature of riding a wagon week after week often inspired the bards of old, so too did the tedious tasks of farming or the sailing of ships lead to the beloved sea shanty.
of every kind. The stories untold.
We can even see a form of music in the syncopated footsteps and call and response used in military drills.
That's the sound of the men working on the chain.
In short, humans have long used music as a distraction while they travel and while they work. As all throughout history, we see example after example of people choosing song over silence.
Good Lord, have mercy. Good Lord, have mercy. Hey, oh, back, 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 back.
And yet, the people of the future past in a galaxy far, far away seem to no longer care about this melodious art form. The biggest reason this anti-melodic paradigm is so surprising is Lucas himself, as he was obsessed with LA car culture and the music of his youth. American Graffiti was George Lucas' last movie before Star Wars. Premiering in 1973, the film takes place in Modesto, California, set in the year 1962. It is a study of the cruising and early rock and roll cultures popular among Lucas' age group at the time. American Graffiti tells the story of a group of teenagers and their adventures over the course of a single night. And most importantly for this conversation, the movie is filled with in-universe music. The kids are blasting their car radios, and those same songs they're rocking out to are also the musical score for the film. And since the characters themselves can hear the music, in filmmaking terms, that means it's diegetic. Diegetic music, also known as source music, is any music that occurs within the world of the film. With diegetic music, the audience is aware that the music playing is what the characters are hearing as well. With non-diegetic music, only the audience can hear the music, the characters cannot. Solo features the Imperial March in a commercial for the Empire. Augie's Great Municipal Band plays in the parade at the end of The Phantom Menace, with Gungans dancing and banging drums as they march. The Force Awakens has its own cantina band just like A New Hope. Revenge of the Sith has an opera house performance that Palpatine and Anakin rudely speak over. Several of these musical models are merely mood-setting. Celebration music because the planet was liberated, or dark, foreboding ambiance just to make the story of Plagueis all the more intriguing. However, this in-universe music can be utilized in a variety of ways aside from simple background noise. If you pay attention, you'll see that very frequently, filmmakers will use diegetic music to set the scene for the characters, and then will slowly shift to non-diegetic, so we, the audience, get a fuller orchestration of the song that the characters were hearing in the story. An example is this scene from The Witcher Season 1, where Jaskier is singing with only the sound of his lute, which slowly transitions as other instruments and choir accompaniment fade in.
Toss a coin to your Witcher, O Valley of Plenty. Toss a coin to your Witcher, O Valley.
Or another example in the Flash movie, in the Marty McFly scene, this guy is playing the keyboard, which to the audience sounds like the non-diegetic soundtrack until the camera pans over to him and we see that the sound was actually diegetic. Star-Lord's tapes are diegetic, with the music on those cassettes being an integral part of the story. Even real-world musicals are almost entirely diegetic productions, as the characters are hearing the music they're singing along to. And in an incredibly interesting note, sometimes audiences can be even more affected by diegetic music than the characters for whom that music is intended. One of my friends was basically traumatized by the Rains of Castamere leading up to the Red Wedding slaughter. The music for the actual murdery bits is all non-diegetic, beautifully written and sets the tone very well, but we don't remember that part. We remember the last thing that Rob and Lady Caitlin heard. We remember and are haunted by the diegetic rains of Castamere. Returning to Lucas, American Graffiti is intrinsically linked to its soundtrack. In fact, they spent so much money on popular songs from the 50s and 60s that they didn't have enough money left over for an original score. Several different versions of the soundtrack sold successfully for decades after the film's release, but the most important thing for us to learn from American Graffiti isn't just that it featured fast cars and diegetic music, but that it was purposefully set in a past that no longer existed. Lucas said, quote, "Cruising was gone, and I felt compelled to document the whole experience and what my generation used as a way of meeting girls."
Are you an angel?
I don't like sand.
And I slaughtered them like animals.
So why doesn't the Millennium Falcon have a radio? One reason this question is so intriguing is because the Star Wars universe is designed around vehicles. Vast landscapes, the endlessness of space. These characters are all constantly traveling, which makes sense for such a sprawling habitable zone. If American cities can become car-dependent in only 150 years, imagine a universe without teleporters and how much it would depend upon various automobiles for travel. The very first thing Lucas shows us at the beginning of every movie are these vehicles, making sure to immediately overemphasize their gargantuan size and the distances they travel. In the first 30 minutes of New Hope, we see a Star Destroyer, Leia's Tantive 4, Luke's X-34 Landspeeder, Jawa's Sandcrawlers, the Millennium Falcon, TIE Fighters, and the Death Star. The point here is that Lucas seems to have very intentionally designed these stories so that vehicles were not an afterthought or a convenient prop to be constantly used, but an integral part of the story. And yet, every single one of these vehicles voyages in silence. Nothing but the hum of the engines and the subdued discussions of the crew. Why are none of these people ever listening to music? Another piece of Lucas that Star Wars embraced was the trope of a muscle car outrunning the law, with Han and Chewie being touted as great pilots with extraordinarily fast vehicles. Part of the draw of the Millennium Falcon is that it's a piece of junk that can outrun all the Empire's most powerful, clean new ships and their most skillful pilots. The Falcon is conceptually the General Lee. Taking a blast into our real life's past, the General Lee was the central prop in the American action comedy TV show The Dukes of Hazzard, which aired on CBS from January 26, 1979 to February 8, 1985. The show features two young male cousins, Bo and Luke Duke, who live in rural Georgia and are on probation for moonshine running, and yet still find an excuse every single episode to get in trouble and outrun the police. And that's just one example from this time period. There's a grand history of muscle cars outrunning the authorities in movies throughout the 60s and 70s, all of which likely had a big influence on Lucas' imagination. It's a short hyperspace skip to see how the Dodge Chargers from these older shows evolved in Lucas' mind into the rebellious Han Solo space smuggler aboard his own souped-up flying version of the General Lee. So, to recap, Lucas has a documented love for muscle cars and for the music that went hand in hand with those cars. So, why didn't Lucas write Han Solo like Bob Falfa? Why did Lucas take elements of the car culture he loved and incorporate that into Star Wars, but not also include the music that was an essential part of that experience? And this topic goes far further than just the spaceships. Luke's family has a home bereft of beats. Padme has no sound soothing her slumber. Jango and Boba have no music playing in their apartment. Even the nightclub, a modern-day institution known for its ear-shattering music, is instead utterly silent. They eat in silence, stare at each other super platonically in silence, they meditate in silence, they battle in silence, they live a silent hermit life and antagonize their coworkers in silence. Why is there no music? Is Lucas theorizing that there will be no such thing as a radio in the future? Do record labels no longer exist? Did T-Swizzy eventually become so dominant that the entire recording industry utterly imploded in the wake of her radiant artistry? Well, as is so often the case, to find that answer, we don't need to be looking at the future. We need to look to the past. Look around you in your day-to-day life, and you'll likely see a number of things that don't quite make sense. Anyone born after the year 2000 likely has no idea what this save symbol in Word is supposed to be. A handshake as a greeting is a normal everyday thing, and yet relatively few people know the practice originated from ancient warriors trying to sow trust, both showing they held no weapon in their dominant right hand. And yet, when we delve further into history, we see an interesting trend. Diegetic music belongs to the past, not the future. In the olden days, most entertainment was self-constructed instead of pre-prepared. If you wanted to listen to music, you had to walk over to the piano and create the melody yourself. Settlers of old used to sit around the fire and play the harmonica and the guitar. Families used to sing together. Traveling bards could make a living just making music to brighten people's otherwise relatively silent day. Now we no longer need to create the music ourselves. Today we open Spotify or YouTube and passively listen instead of needing to actively create. Music as a live performance is something that now feels relegated to the past, which explains why so many fantasy stories can have music that feels completely natural. Picture a modern scene in a bar and how totally unrealistic it would feel for the characters to be singing and dancing. And yet, Merry and Pippin doing so feels like the most natural thing in the world. Fantasy, by its nature, attempts to capture a past that has been lost, a skill set that has been lost, as humanity no longer needs to perform in order to have lives enriched by what music offers. Psychologically, we may also feel that music belongs in the past because most modern Americans learn and perform a significant amount of music in our early childhood. We sing in school choirs, perform terrible renditions on flutophones. The more dedicated of us may be playing throughout high school, practicing daily until we graduate and it all ends. 100% of my close friends in high school were fellow band members, and now only a very, very small percentage of those friends still play their instruments. And this experience seems to be extremely normal. Once we grew up, performing music becomes relegated to worship services, the occasional drunken karaoke night, or singing secretively in the car or the shower. Sitting around with friends and singing songs is something we used to do when we were young, back in the old days. Movies and shows that are coded as being in the past are far more likely to feature music as an everyday part of life, compared to works coded as taking place in the future. Characters in Lord of the Rings sing at every available moment, from funeral songs to drinking songs to songs about their long-lost mountain. Elves, humans, hobbits, and even the stoic dwarves all embrace music as part of their world. Even looking at the world of theatrical musicals in real life, we see a large number of fan favorites are coded as taking place in the past. Sweeney Todd, Phantom of the Opera, Les Mis, Hairspray, Chicago, The Sound of Music, The Producers. In fact, it's fairly rare for a musical to be set in the future. Music has become part of the forgotten history of our youth. And as the human race continues to evolve, it seems likely to continue to stray further and further away from the musical paradigm of the past. And this may be the underlying reason as to why there is so little diegetic music in the Star Wars franchise. Because Lucas is seeing this evolution, is seeing where it will take humanity, to a place where we drive our cars in silence, eat our meals in silence, do our work in silence, where humans have lost some beautiful part of themselves, no longer appreciating the melodious refrain. Next, let's examine the real meat of this essay and explore the examples of diegetic music that we do find in the Star Wars franchise. As we discussed earlier, yes, John Williams' amazing soundtrack is a significant reason that the films have been so successful. But those soundtracks are for you and I, while the in-world music is intended for the fictional characters. Examine several examples of diegetic music in the Star Wars films, from the Gungan Parade, the opera music, the Cantina song from A New Hope, the Max Rebo band performance in Jabba's Palace, the Ewok celebration, the Cantina band in Maz's Castle, even this super weird yet hauntingly memorable duo performing on Dryden's ship. In all of these, you will notice a unifying theme. Music is rarely performed by humans. Humans may be in attendance, but they nearly never note any of the music happening nearby. Music is being performed around them by native alien life, but this music isn't for the humans of our story, and therefore, this music isn't really for us, the audience. Yes, the Star Wars universe has hundreds of diverse non-human species, and many of them are significant characters in the films. However, the main characters and significant players of the franchise are all human, so that we, those of us who are fellow humans, can relate to them. Gungans and Ewoks can play drums and sing their traditional songs. Jabba can have his own house band. But the Naboo don't sing mournful songs as they're being marched off to death camps. The children in the Jedi Temple aren't singing songs to help memorize the different lightsaber forms. Luke isn't humming the classic songs of Tatooine with his aunt and uncle while they drink their blue milk. And Han Solo isn't blaring the radio as he flees Imperial space cops. For the humans in the Star Wars universe, music is totally absent from their lives. So what does this examination show us regarding how George Lucas structured diegetic music for his space opera? Why is Dex's Diner one of the only places playing diegetic background music? I would say because it's styled after a retro 1950s diner. Because the music of the future isn't for us, because the music of the past has been lost. American Graffiti was about the lost car culture of Lucas's youth, and the music he remembers from that golden age. Fast forward 1,000 years into the world of Star Wars, and he depicts how the music of the future is for the races and species of the future, the technology of the future, the planets and galaxies of the future. The music of the past is lost, and with it, humanity has become diminished. The music of these worlds intended for everyone except us. The Gungans on Naboo, the bands on Tatooine, the Ewoks on Endor. Most of the musical performers that we see are coded as being natives, while the human colonists sit as guests watching as the natives perform. Colonialism as a field of study concerns the investigation of the effects of settlers on the native population. In our world, we study the effect of the Spanish forces on the Aztecs and Mayans, or how the British prison colonies interacted with Australian Aborigines. The natives of Tatooine are the Jawas, Banthas, and Tusken Raiders. The other species we meet, especially the humans, are obviously immigrants from off-world. And these humans very frequently use pejorative terms when referring to the native inhabitants. The Gungans live under the water in air-filled bubbles to avoid their enemy, the Naboo. Boss Nass doesn't say, "We'za no carin' about the humans." He says, "We'za no carin' about the Naboo," an entire conquering nation. While the Gungans are amphibious, evolution didn't force them below the waters. An invading force of humans did, millennia before the events of the Phantom Menace. While the Empire wasn't colonizing the forest moon of Endor, they did invade the Ewok homeworld and set up an outpost, land troops, and generally disrupt the blissful life of peaceful rituals that the Ewoks lived. And it is consistently these natives, not the humans, who perform the music. Many of these examples seem to be directly coded after the Native Americans, or at least the depictions we see of them in the movies, wildly banging drums and dancing around the fire after fighting off the evil invading settlers. This same idea is repeated throughout Star Wars, as we see the natives celebrating defeating an invading force. The Gungans are able to make music and celebrate when the Trade Federation is banished from their home planet. The Ewoks celebrate after driving the Empire off their home planet. And maybe now we've landed on a hidden reason that humans have no music, because they also have no home. Had Lucas written these stories based on real life, it's very easy to see how often folks who leave their homes behind tend to bring their music with them, a bit of cultural memory of what they've left behind. The American national anthem is set to the tune of a British drinking song. New Orleans jazz has its roots in African folk songs brought over by slaves. As the Spanish-speaking population of the United States has increased, it is now very common to have pop songs featuring the Spanish language. In real life, when humans move from place to place, we take a bit of our culture with us, which gets slowly integrated into the culture of our new homeland. But in this future that Lucas depicts, maybe humans have moved around too much. Settle planet after planet, and you never have time to maintain, let alone expand your cultural identity. After examining these stories, Lucas seems to be showing that music stems from a very strong cultural foundation, rooted in the people's development on their home world. But in Star Wars, humans have no homeworld, they have no base culture, no shared identity. It seems like humans just spread out and adapt the lifestyle of whatever culture they came in contact with, without bringing any culture of their own. No music, no dance, no cuisine, no art. Star Wars is a universe in which humans are parasites, moving from planet to planet, seeking resources or power, and leaving nothing behind worth singing about. Something worth noting is that this discussion on diegetic music is mostly centered around the stories where Lucas was in control. After his departure, future creators tried to emulate his work without fully grasping the meaning. While Andor was an amazing piece of art, it completely deviates from the established precedent of humans not performing music, yet gives no insight into this paradigm shift. Why were these humans on this planet musically inclined? What concept does this scene introduce? Or was it so beautifully shot that nobody realized how much it differs from what preceded it? While Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor are beloved games, what would Lucas think about Cal's Walkman or his record collection? How does the rest of the EU fit within the musical model that Lucas created? Or, quite possibly, did Lucas not actually intend any of this subtext that we've discussed? The Star Wars Holiday Special, produced just 1 year after A New Hope, is absolutely filled with humans performing diegetic music. Is this show different because it plays more like a live theatrical production? Or did these popular singers of the past refuse to dress up in costumes like Lucas had wanted? Why is this the one example of Lucas' work where humans are the musicians? Or, as fans so often do, am I just reading too much into a story that he was making up as he went? It isn't difficult to imagine Han and Chewie fighting over the dial because Chewie wants to listen to the sonorous tones of his people, while Han wants some classic Max Rebo. Perhaps future installments will show Leia singing Baby Ben to sleep, or show the Jedi Council gathering force power by harmonizing power chords. But for now, the humans in Star Wars are as far from appreciating music as they are from their non-existent home planet. We have covered a lot of information, but the most interesting bit to me is the direction that George Lucas seems to think that humanity is heading. THX 1138 is about a society where people have lost their humanity. American Graffiti is about the lost joys of Lucas' youth. And relevant to this topic, Star Wars is about the lost culture of humanity in the face of advancing technology. So if there's a lesson to take away, I'd say it's that our culture is not guaranteed. Our art is not inherently existent. If we do not consciously decide to partake in the arts, to maintain the music of our various homelands, we are sure to lose what once made us so unique. If we don't make the effort to pick up our instruments, to practice, maybe the music will fade out of our lives too, leaving us flying silently from planet to planet, searching for a melody we can no longer remember. Why doesn't the Millennium Falcon have a radio? Maybe the simplest answer is just because we stopped listening. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.